Welcome to the Crypto Traders Podcast, simplifying cryptocurrency for traders and investors around the world. Subscribe for interviews with developers, market updates, and a professional look at the future of money. You've come to trust Matthew and Kurt to filter out the noise across social media. Now you can listen on the go. Without further ado, here's the Crypto Traders Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Traders Podcast. I'm Kurt Wooker Jr. with Matthew John from CryptoTradersPro.com. Reminding you first, check out CryptoTradersPro.com/Bitcoin Bootcamp. Greatest thing in the universe, I promise you. We are joined today by the lead, I believe you're the lead developer at CryptoFights, something like
architect.
that.
I do, yeah. Some of everything at this point.
The chief scientist over at CryptoFights, David Case. How are you, my friend?
I am doing fabulous.
Wonderful. So let's jump right into it. What exactly is CryptoFights in your own words? How would you explain it to somebody who has no idea what we're talking about?
So CryptoFights is a mobile 3D fighting game where it's turn-based and every action that is taken is recorded to the Bitcoin SV blockchain. All items that you take into battle with you are tokens that are owned in the cryptocurrency space and can be traded and sold, and they have their own, essentially each item type is its own cryptocurrency, really, with its own max supply and different aspects of them.
Interesting.
So you're equipping your fighter with armor and weapons and going into battle with each other.
Very cool. So when you say you'd own your own item, let's say I like a battle axe or something, would I earn that battle axe and then I'm the owner of it in perpetuity unless I sell it or something like that?
Yeah, it is. At this point, we're using a token called Enjin coin, which actually backs the items. So you own these items. They're yours. They're a token that lives on Ethereum right now. Mm-hmm. And you go into battle with each other, and those things can be bought, sold, and you get them both. I mean, you can buy them. They get dropped throughout the game. There's certain mini games that can be earned. And then there's obviously a full marketplace out of the game where people can buy and trade them.
Very cool.
So I had a question. You say this is built on the BSV blockchain. Well, how does somebody access to play the game? Is it mobile or?
So it's mobile, and then we also have I guess it's kind of a block explorer, but basically a WebGL application that you can point at a certain hash that defines a certain transaction hash that defines the battle, and play through it and watch it one step at a time. So you can do analysis on that, or you can just watch it. So there's kind of a whole almost a Twitch aspect to it, where the games can be streamed essentially either live or recorded historically, and all that lives, essentially reconstructs all the actions within the battle based on looking at the Bitcoin transactions.
That's very cool. What is your development background? How'd you get involved in a project like this?
My background is quite varied over the years. I've been in IT consulting and software development for many, many years. I got involved with this actually. So I to get to kind of, I guess, the crypto space, which really gets me into there. A friend of mine in 2013 was super into Bitcoin. I didn't get it at the time at all, but I was techie and somewhat interested in just the fact that it was going on. So he came over from Chicago, actually, visited me one time, and then I bought lunch and he paid me back in Bitcoin. Had some Android phone at the time. I don't even know what wallet I used. Saved my backup to Google Drive, which is probably a horrible idea. But then like summer 2017, after I think the Bitcoin Cash split, but I didn't know anything about it yet. As Bitcoin starts really going up in value, I remembered that I had this wallet somewhere, so I went and found it. And from there, just kind of got totally sucked into the crypto space in general. And of course, that's when everything was skyrocketing value-wise. So.
Right. Yeah.
So I had a e-commerce platform that I was the architect on at the time. I started a company 2010, and was just kind of, that had run its course for me, and I was ready to move on to something else. And the crypto space just won me over. And then Adam, who's our CEO, had made a random post on a Ethereum devs Reddit channel or something about looking for a dev. And I'd played around in that space, so I just reached out to him and went from there.
Simple enough, yeah. So, I mean, the game name implies that it was always intended to be a blockchain-based game, but did it start that way, or who decided, hey, let's put this on the blockchain?
No, it started that way. I mean, at least when I don't know, before, I mean, I started on pretty much before there was any sort of a whole lot of work done in any direction. There had been thought through some various game mechanics and various rule structures and stuff.
Sure.
But the idea was really to create, at the point, it was really the first actual interactive crypto game, because it was, I mean, CryptoKitties had blown up the world from just the collectible side of things.
Right.
And it was going to be super simple at first. I mean, very much you kind of set up your characters, you put them into the battle. There's a trusted random number generation process, and it would just play out and pay out to whoever. But that didn't scale well on Ethereum, and it just that was a short-lived approach.
Okay, sure. Interesting. Well, yeah, much the same, the way CryptoKitties came out. I thought, it was a cool enough idea, but then, brought the median transaction fee on Ethereum up to a few dollars, and then it was a nightmare. Of course, if you had the right kitty, you had like a $60,000 tokenized cat on the blockchain. So that's kind of cool. But very interesting. So how long have you been in development then with CryptoFights?
I joined up pretty much 1st of February or late January of 2018. So a year and a few months.
Sure. Like peak crypto. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You mentioned that players were able to earn tokens or BS. Is it BSV they're able to earn through their fights? How does that work?
Actually, we have an in-game currency. There's a lot of different models that are all being played around with, but the main one we've got right now is there's an in-game currency that is not crypto. That's actually purchasable through the app stores on the phones. So that we can kind of separate out the crypto concerns with the other ones, but with that you can buy your items just like in any other game where you're acquiring equipment, and those items do then get persisted on the blockchain.
Sure.
Okay.
Now, what is the status of the game now? Is it in beta, or can we download and play, or where are we at?
So we were very, very close to beta with a proprietary back-end system kind of before the whole BSV thing blew up. And when BSV became a thing, I don't know, it kind of took over my mindset in such a way that I realized that was really where we needed to go. So we did a pretty big pivot. We've got it right now. So internally, we're able to play through some very, very simple battles. But we're looking to open that up to a couple very small beta testers.
Okay.
But it's the gameplay. Mostly our focus has been on the kind of the infrastructure side of things over the last couple of months. So the gameplay still has some work before it's actually fun.
Okay. And is that all in-source? Do you have like in-house animators, or are you outsourcing some of that? How much?
We're outsourcing a lot of it. But I mean, a lot of it is through Upwork. We've got our core team is, we've got 2 Unity developers that are full-time, working on the actual game client itself. And then we've got Adam, who's our CEO and kind of project manager and stuff. And then I'm working very much on the blockchain side of things.
Very cool.
And then various outsourced.
Yeah, I'm sure. We get asked the same question. How many employees do you have? Like, technically, I don't know, 2 or 7. So where do you think the future of gaming is going? Like, as a guy that's actually developing in the game space, do you think phones, full disclosure, I did not think phone games would be so huge, because I remember playing Snake and whatever and just being like, and then all of a sudden, like, I think phone games are probably the most profitable place to be, actually.
Yeah, I think from a business standpoint, they haven't yet. I mean, I've spent way too much time playing some Candy Crush or some 2048 or something over the years. But as far as like anything action-wise, I really don't like phone games, because the fact that your thumbs are in the way of the screen the whole time, I find that very complicated. But I mean, from a marketplace standpoint, that's I'm certainly not in the majority there. So
Sure.
I think I mean, our focus is really looking at esports and the whole kind of bringing together data and community and everything together into one space. And Bitcoin has just given us amazing abilities to be able to, I mean, our ambition has grown exponentially since we started looking at this space for what we can take on. And I really think that, I mean, the multiverse or the kind of looking at Ready Player One style world is really, the tools are there to do that. And it's really exciting.
What do you think of the VR space? One of the projects we talk about internally quite a bit is Mana Decentraland. And I actually talked to the guys on the BSV channel, Shem and Tramp and Sirtoshi, and they were like, you know, obviously all they talk about is Bitcoin SV, but I don't remember which one of them spoke up and was like, yeah, no, Decentraland and Mana is kind of cool though. So have you looked into any of kind of the more complex development there?
I saw that episode of theirs and it got me thinking a little bit. At this point, really, though, that got to be one more thing in a huge stack of overwhelming world we can build here. But I mean, certainly having almost real estate where these different apps can live is, I mean, it's there's not really any limits to how you could build together all sorts of different aspects of an entire world. And it's intriguing. It's very intriguing, but I don't have a whole lot of thought that I put into it.
Sure.
It seems like that's the direction that gaming is headed. I played Halo and Call of Duty. I grew up playing esports and going to these events and competing, and just seeing how that's evolved. And now we're moving on to Fortnite and these more open world game concepts. So I really do think that is where it's headed. I'm curious, what do you think about how VR gets incorporated into that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific insight, but I just know that the way that things can interconnect and you move that, or you combine that with the way that you can be completely in the world you're living in. I mean, I don't know. It's very overwhelming, again, to try and get to any specific, like, there's a lot of ways things could play out, and it's super exciting to be part of it. But to figure out where it's going to take off or what the first pieces that come together are.
Sure.
I don't know.
Do you think the blockchain concept in gaming, does it make your job easier or does it give you too much to think about?
It gives you a lot more tools to start thinking in ways that you couldn't think about before. And especially when you start bringing in the community of developers and extensibility of things. Like, I wrote an article a couple months ago about just a simple concept of a chess game where each piece kind of has its own rule set defined in a piece of code that's stored out on the blockchain. So that if you are moving a knight, it's going to call the knight code and it's going to have the board and it's going to know where a knight can move. But and the client for that obviously is going to need to trust that the code that's put out there is signed by the developers and it behaves the rules that it was designed to do. But there's nothing to stop someone else from making another client that uses that same rule set but introduces whole new kinds of pieces or whole new kinds of boards where those same pieces and their rules all apply, but the whole game can get extended based on the exact same code base that's there and just a couple other little pieces. And so when you start looking at the ways that people can take and extend and using, for instance, our weapons in CryptoFights, they really could have other games that can use our battle axe or our whatever in an entirely different game that has nothing to do with our rule sets at all, but it uses all our assets, which are stored in Bitcoin, it takes all our, I mean, you can cut it and slice it any way you want to. And that's pretty exciting.
It is. No, that's incredible. So it's almost like, I mean, your stuff that you design could end up being eternal. I mean, I guess they are eternal if they're on the blockchain, but people can reuse them in the future. I could almost see, if you think about antiquities collectors, right? Like somebody wants, a spoon held by the Apostle Paul or something, like, but it could have that same kind of gravitas to it. Like, oh my gosh, David made this weapon in 2019.
Yeah.
years ago, and I'm gonna kill you with it now in my weird VR game.
Well, and it's really cool too, because each weapon can have its own kind of provenance, its own, this has been in these 15 battles, and this is the sword that slew the master, that took over the lead of the whatever.
Right, like they get actual
chart.
historical significance to them. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, I think it's interesting. I remember when you sort of popped into the BSV economy, and there were a few people. I was in the Slack channel there, and people are like, "Hey, some guy's moving his Ethereum project over to SV," and I'm curious. First of all, what was the first thing that made you look at SV, and then why? Why did it become so obvious to you that that was the direction that you should go?
Yeah. To be honest, a lot of the epiphany I had could have been done on Bitcoin Cash. When I was first learning about things in the crypto space, obviously BTC had made it such that Bitcoin was just not a development platform. So, and all the developer, especially in the Ethereum world, they're like, oh, you can't do, everyone's used to looking at like actual normal software development, which says, okay, I've got these tools and I work within this framework, and here are the capabilities you've got. And so I think, I had some interest in Bitcoin Cash just simply from I think this is a better path for Bitcoin. And so I had a couple $100 invested in BCH or something. But I think when the hash war started to happen, I tuned into some of the different live streams that were going on. And that just kind of, I don't know, because that didn't bring any realization about what we could do in BSV, but it just got my interest focusing there. And then as I read more and kind of started understanding the concept of a commodity ledger, it really provided all the pieces that we were really having to engineer some really complicated pieces for were just there. And so the idea that proof of work consensus is going, and I can just put data out there and I don't have to worry about the consensus mechanism or coming up with a new proof of stake or proof of authority I didn't have to come up with an algorithm that says this is how this finalization works and this is the trust mechanisms around there. I could just say, I could just use what's there. And then as I started kind of reading about it, the kind of the unfucking of op return is really what started helping me to realize that I can store whatever I want out there, and that just really, really opened up the floodgates of what we're doing.
Is there like a specific limitation in Ethereum that kind of makes it obvious? I'm not a developer, so I wonder if you can give me like a dumbed down version of like, Ethereum doesn't work.
Well, it isn't that it doesn't work, but Ethereum, the base idea is anything you transfer, any transaction you make, essentially has to get mined right away. There isn't really a concept that says I can sign a transaction and pass it off and you can do something with it later. So Ethereum is in some ways a much bigger approach in that it really tries to tackle a lot more issues. But by doing that, it really hems you in, where Bitcoin it's just way more foundational layer. It really is like a networking layer in a lot of ways that just happens to have financials built into it, which opens the world up that you can really do anything. It's just how you put the pieces together. And a lot of the pieces there's not a big roadmap that says this is how you do this. And so as you just understand what it is you can do, you can do anything with it. And it's I don't know, that probably doesn't help a lot, but Ethereum's, if you're looking from a normal software development standpoint that says I want to just build this tool, here's how I set up functions, here's how I tie things together. It fits with a normal developer's outlook on things. Bitcoin is just so much bigger, and it's so many less confines on what you can do.
Interesting. So if you had, let's say you had like an EOS developer or somebody in your position a year ago saying, hey, like what are 2 or 3 reasons why I should switch my beta level project from EOS or Stellar or Ethereum and take a good look at SV as a developer?
barrier to entry and tied to that cost are just the huge wins right away. I haven't played too deeply with EOS, but I've definitely played around with it some.
Yeah.
But like the fact that you've got to stake significant amount of tokens in EOS to be able
Right.
to do anything, I mean,
Mm.
that's a really bummer. And especially when you start to get like users who are onboarding and you want users to play, like them having to get the currency, that in itself is a huge barrier.
Sure.
And with Bitcoin, we can do all sorts of things where we pay for users' transactions. They don't have to have
Sure.
BSV in order to, or they don't have to start with BSV, and then have to, like, we can
Right.
transfer teeny tiny amounts of money to them to make their initial sets of turns until they can actually earn some in the world, or until they decide that they want to lift some
Sure.
barriers. It's cheap enough that we can actually finance playing and still get all the benefits of things being recorded with the blockchain.
Fascinating. You know, we interviewed EOS developers about a year ago now, and I was so confused. We ended up doing 2 like almost 3-hour interviews with, I think we talked to 6 or 7 guys total. And I was just like, guys, okay, so how do we get from point A to point B? And that's why we ended up doing a second interview. Is there, you should really talk to XYZ. And it was just like, man, it's like there's so many cool ideas there, but it's so convoluted. And
and just, I mean, the other thing is proof of work has just really won me over, which I don't know why that took so long, but I think the BTC limits on scaling have just made people think that it can't scale. But
right.
But I mean, if you look at comparing BSV to EOS, for instance, or EOS, I don't know how they pronounce it, but it's like, even in the worst case concerns about BSV that it becomes centralized, well, when you're comparing it to something that is by definition centralized, and having an open incentive structure that incentivizes people to join in and compete,
right?
I mean, it's like the idea with EOS is that these data centers are going to be investing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in their infrastructure. Well, if we're going to do that, why not use proof of work that is proven, that there isn't any trade-offs on it. It is the whole system. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's fascinating. I think the other thing, when I talk to people in the Ethereum communities, and I occasionally will go to a Chicago Ethereum meetup and kind of see what
one a few times.
Yeah, and they're interesting. Obviously, a lot of smart people there. But people routinely will just say that Ethereum simply has the best development community. And I'm curious, first of all, if you would agree, and then what do you think SV or other development communities could do to maybe be better? Or would you even agree with that statement that Ethereum has the best development community?
I wouldn't. Especially, I mean, 3 months ago, I would have, just because BSV didn't really have one. But first of all, the stuff that Unwriter has done has been like amazing, because most everything he's released, who knows, that has been released, has just fallen in line with my needs. Like, there has been probably 3 or 4 times in the last 2 months where there's been like, okay, the next thing I need to start working on is X, Y, or Z, and then within a day or 2 days, there's everything I need to do what I'm doing. And then it isn't just Unwriter, although Unwriter certainly has been hugely influential to inspiring us. But like Attila Aros, I don't know how
I think it's Aros, yeah.
He's coming up with some really, really cool stuff. There's, I mean, in Unwriter Slack, there's 4 or 5 people that are just coming up with new amazing stuff all the time, and it's I don't know. As far as innovation goes, I don't think there's any comparison from any other place to where Bitcoin SV is right now.
How active is Unwriter in the Slack? Are they constantly communicating, or they just kind of come out from behind the curtain every once in a while?
They're pretty involved in things, especially when things get. I mean, there's some more just communication of what's going on in the space or whatever. I'm not really plugged into that, but when it comes to their tools or questions in general, they're very active. And I mean, I probably end up communicating with them every couple days on some question here or there. So
pretty cool. That's it's fascinating. We're having a lot of internal conversations about whether or not Unwriter is an AI from the future or whatever
I mean,
else.
the conversations I've had, it seems very much like one person.
Okay,
But
interesting.
the quality of their, like, the documentation that goes along with it isn't just coming up with this cool tool. It's coming up with this cool tool, and everything's very clean in code, and there's documentation that comes out with it. Like, if it isn't one person, I mean, if it's not more than one person, it's someone who's got one heck of a focus. Like, I can't do that. I mean, it's not like I mean, most of the things that they've come up with are not like this super world-changing innovative things. It's incremental
Right.
stuff, but it's incremental stuff that just keeps coming and coming and coming, and
Right.
it's really well put together. And they've already thought through all the complications. And
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I asked a question about the security model of Bottle, the browser,
Yeah.
the B browser, a couple days ago, and just like I had some questions of kind of how secure certain aspects were, and like today they just released a release that fixes everything I brought up, and that was 2 or 3 days ago.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the rumors come from, right? Nobody can fathom somebody being able to do work that well, but
Right.
you know, who is it one person? Is it 6 people? And yeah, I love the rumor mill around it. We need the faceless heroes in our lives. So interesting. All right, let's segue a little bit. If you could go back 2 years, if we could get in the time machine and you could talk to the you of, let's say, 2017, what would be one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Probably not to move forward thinking I had the space figured out nearly as fast as I did. I mean, I think if I would have understood what Bitcoin can do, I think I probably would have spent a lot more time in the Bcash space and figuring out what I could do there. And reality, even with a 220 byte op return, there's a lot you can do there.
Sure.
Now we're far more aggressive in what we can do now.
Yeah.
And like ideas of actually storing state transfer code on chain, we wouldn't have been able to do then. But being able to record and sign different things in op return and being able to kind of track the actions that go through for a reasonable cost, I think I probably would have spent a lot more time there. But I also don't know that I could have learned the lessons without trying to go through all the other hoops too.
Right.
So
yeah, it's that hindsight. I always wonder if I shorted all of my Bitcoin at $20,000 and try to do the math in my own head. Right. The whole thing is fascinating. How much change there's been, and even just kind of the attitude since 2017. Because I remember my great aunt at Thanksgiving in 2017 asking me if she should buy Bitcoin. I was like, ooh, that's a bad sign, I think. So
I talked my mom into buying $40 of Ethereum last year, which I'm glad it was only $40, but I think it's worth now like $7 or something.
I'm curious, being a developer, how do you think the bear market has had an impact on the development of these projects?
I don't know that it actually has that much. And I mean, obviously, I haven't been in a place where I was in an ICO in Ethereum that had tons of funding or anything like that. But I guess I feel like it's mostly a lot of really good marketing for most of the projects that are out there. And I mean, I've been fairly active in following IPFS, for instance, which isn't really crypto. There's no, I mean, other than Filecoin, there's not really an ICO tied to that. And there are definitely things that are making great progress in this space that have nothing to do with the underlying funding structures at all. And I think, to be honest, keeping investor types, no offense, from being so politically involved in the space, I think really helps a lot, because when so much of the discussion is about the valuation and has nothing to do with the underlying tech at all, it's right. It just kind of gives crypto a bad name, I think, in the public space. And it's unhealthy. And it's funny, we run a trading community, so for us, we have that conversation where, like, yes, trading is a valid, it's a business, it's something you can do with your time, but when trading and investing is all of the action happening on a coin, like, that's a sign that something is innately unhealthy. So we turned into big advocates of telling people, like,
like look for underlying utility. If you are a Bitcoiner or whatever, you should be helping onboard merchants, or be an evangelist. Don't just be like, hey, buy this, buy shitcoin A or shitcoin B, and buy a Lambo in 6 months or whatever. But it's interesting talking to the developer types who in many cases are living entirely on like, well, yeah, we've got a war chest of Ethereum, and well, now it's gone down by 85% or whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's just like we have not had a whole lot of income in any place at this point, but we did do our pre-sale, and all those items are backed by ENJ
Sure.
token, and then we've got some Ethereum, obviously, from various aspects that are required to work in the Ethereum space. But even the fact that just looking at our limited business finances of, okay, how do we, when do we sell this stuff or convert it to fiat, or like,
Right.
That's just a whole aspect of business that I don't want to have to think about. I don't,
Right.
And especially because when it comes to the trading side of things, every instinct I've ever had is cost me. So
yeah.
Luckily they've been fairly limited, but
sure. Well, it kind of answers my next question. Like, do you do any trading yourself, or?
I mean, I did a little bit last year, but I mean, not even a significant what I would put in a investment account or anything like that. It's
right.
At the max, I probably had a few grand involved.
Sure.
Yeah, but
right, not worth much anymore.
But just watching it just adds so much stress, or you get so excited about things, and and I think really it falls in with everything else in our society right now, that the information that we're getting or that we're seeing is not unbiased, and not like everything is so fake, and it's so complex to try and understand what are the motivations of what you're seeing, and especially if you're looking in Twitter or Reddit or stuff, where so much of the activity is absolutely there just to push sentiment one way or another. It's not a place I like to spend time.
No, it's terrifying. Well, especially we've got Blockstream and Digital Currency Group and stuff own a lot of the media channels, and so if you go to like Cointelegraph, it's these things are fed from insiders, and I think a lot of people don't understand just how insidious some of that marketing kind of is, but we're in a weird spot.
Yeah, and I found as I've gotten into BSV, I've gotten more involved with Twitter. I really haven't used Twitter much in years. Ben, I had kind of pulled away from Facebook a lot last year as well, and I'm finding now that my favorite place to hang out socially is just on the Slack channels for the whether it be Unwriters, whether it be the MetaNet ICU one.
Right.
That's people who are actually caring to talk about what's really going on in the space that I care about. So
yeah, things of value for sure. What do you think is if you could have one development tool that would change everything for you, what would that look like? Or is Unwriter just working on it and you don't know yet?
To be honest, I'm still catching up with. I mean, I've been in Planaria a lot, which is Planaria is kind of the backbone for a lot of the tools for almost all the tools that Unwriter has been writing lately. And I've been in that code a lot, and it provides pretty much everything I need to be able to take things to where I need to customize them for our use cases. And Planaria, to be honest, is probably that tool, even though it exists. Cool. I have not yet found. Now, certainly having some decent, we have to go through a lot of .NET libraries because our client code is written in Unity, and most all that is Bitcoin Cash or BTC, and so all of that needs. I mean, there's just so much convoluted stuff, and all the documentation is about SegWit or is about old color coin stuff. It's there's a lot of just 5 years of going the wrong direction that gets in the way of having a good clean code base there. But that's mostly for our other developers to deal with. Sure. So I mean, I have to help them figure out how to do things since I'm kind of the subject matter expert in Bitcoin. But the JavaScript world, which is where I spend a lot of my time, is really, really strong.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was curious, what is the primary thing that you're building with? Because I know CSS and HTML are options given some Unwriter's tools as well. But Java. I feel like everybody hates Java, and also everyone uses Java for everything.
Yeah, JavaScript, which is Java and JavaScript. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mostly, yeah, everything I'm doing is JavaScript. Now there's for kind of the long-term, really secure approach to what we're doing. There's WebAssembly, which is kind of built on top of the same JavaScript environments. It's built into the browsers. It's built into Node.js. That's probably going to be a more higher performance, more flexible way to really go forward long term. But JavaScript, as far as like just rapidly prototyping things and then being able to tie them down, all of Unwriter's tools are in JavaScript. The BSV library that Moneybutton's been maintaining is in JavaScript. And those, I mean, it covers pretty much everything that you'll need. So
cool. So is there anything we've missed? Is there anything you wish more people would ask you?
I don't know specifically. I wish more people would ask me more things. I'm in Michigan and kind of isolated when it comes to developers, like people who stretch my brain in any way. And so that's one reason I've really loved being involved in the Slack communities. And I'm totally open for people to reach out to me to any problems they've got, any ideas they want, because I love thinking through this stuff. And it's just, I mean, I have a passion now that is way more than what I had even over the last year when I was already passionate about the crypto stuff. It feels very much to me like when I had my first Nokia smartphones or BlackBerry, maybe before the iPhone was a thing, and you could just see the future in your hand, even though it wasn't there yet. You realize that it's there. It's just needs some things to come together and some people to work on it. And there's a lot of people excitedly working on it. So, so I'd love for people to pick my brain and let me share that excitement with you.
What is your time frame for? Everybody always asks us about mass adoption. That's kind of a general term, but when do you think we start seeing more adoption?
I think in the BSV space, it's going to surprise everyone how quickly it comes. I certainly don't have any grand insight, and I'm wrong on a lot of these other things, but the tools are there and the cost point is there, and it seems like developers are coming on board all the time. And in the 2 months I've been on Unwriter's Slack channel, for instance, let me see here. I feel it's probably doubled in size in that amount of time, and the Metanet ICU's gotten considerably bigger than that even. And it just seems like there are people coming in and getting excited, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of really cool stuff. And not just like me who are kind of working on end user engagement, but more so even all the supporting tools underneath. Yeah,
for sure.
I'm curious, what kind of value do you put on? So what we were big on, and I guess, we're still big on, is merchant adoption. We believe cryptocurrency should be used as money. What value do you put on that? I see all these other tools getting built on BSV, but is there a focus on merchant adoption?
Yeah, see, that's kind of a different space than where I live much. For me personally, I think that's a huge thing. And I think having a way that people can onboard easily, having a Coinbase or something like that would obviously help. But I think what's really cool is, we're coming up with some really creative ideas to be able to get people into that without having, to essentially be able to earn crypto, or, we've got some ideas that we've been throwing around of embedding advertising in the game, where the advertisers essentially pay for users' transaction fees. And so you can get them in the space. You can have everything recorded to Bitcoin without the user ever owning any Bitcoin at all. Now, obviously, the more we can not have to subsidize that or not have to throw ads at them, or the more we can get people who are natively paying the 3/100ths of a cent, or 3/100ths of a cent it costs for a transaction,
right,
the better. But the fact that you can do a transaction for literally 3/100ths of a cent is a dust transaction right now. That's amazing what you can do with that.
I've been a mass adoption advocate for since 2013 is when I started paying some of my employees and stuff in Bitcoin. This is a life ago now, but I got a bunch of people onboarded to accept Bitcoin at their pizza place or their coffee place or whatever, and they've all slowly just kind of dropped off. And we've spent now like almost 2 years with crypto traders trying to get more people interested and ginned up about that. And it's like people just don't want to spend it on pizza and coffee. And so I think it's an interesting approach to kind of turn it around and say, okay, like how can we actually create internet value where people are incentivized to transact? And I think it's interesting how much the split between BCH and BSV has kind of magnified how much, first of all, that BCH only wants to be cash is kind of the narrative I'm getting out of all of them. But that it can be cash when it has that underlying other utility that we've been saying. Like the utility that I've been looking for the last couple of years is that utility as cash. And now I feel like maybe I've been not wrong, but maybe that's not the order that it absolutely needs to go in. And that, you know, BTC has turned it into like, well, it's got to be a goal. Like it has to be a collectible first and do nothing until it accrues enough value to spend. Well, that doesn't make a lick of sense to me either. But if people like desire to play a game and the game can only be played in Bitcoin, then that's like, well, you know, I can spend 3 pennies and play your game for 6 months, right? And that becomes the like, oh, now the blockchain is becoming robust there. So I'm evolving there.
Yeah, and I think that there still is going to be some creative onboarding things. I know Ryan Charles talks about that. Some various creative ways to kind of get people into the space or earning small amounts. And I think that there's going to be a number of creative things like that are just going to pile up over time. I mean, again, I would love it if it was just like, oh, anywhere you go, you can go to an ATM and buy Bitcoin without paying huge fees or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the fact that, I mean, I guess this isn't quite the same thing. This goes more to the trading, but like looking at coin market cap or whatever, like the fact that BSV pretty much moves within $1 either way, and that's it ever over the last couple months. That while the other ones are like, it feels like there just is a underlying core of people aren't getting ahead of themselves. People aren't trying to pretend that we're there. People are working and it's stable. It's not like it's the whims of the market don't seem to be playing with it at all.
Right.
And that seems really good. In fact, I almost wonder if there's some intentionality of that, of like just trying to keep things stable. Price and everything else.
We've been speculating about that ourselves. I mean, Matt's a full-time technical analyst, so we talk about that, and I keep saying like, it's not a trader's chart for sure, but I'm not really sure why that is, especially when other things are. I mean, we've had BTC is zigzagging still even, and it's been pretty stable, but I don't know that anything's been as stable as BSV on the chart either. So,
well, and it might be too that, I mean, because as a I hate to use the word community because I don't quite mean that, but it's kind of this, like most people who are involved in the crypto space just aren't interested at all, which means then it's not really susceptible to a lot of the whims of the manipulation, which the more, I mean, I know I've heard you talk about it a number of times, but kind of the more you start to see, I mean, it's like the whole thing might be just be smoke and mirrors and there isn't anything going on at all.
Right. So. Yeah, it's terrifying. So let's see. I'm trying to think of a good wrapper upper. Does anybody deserve a shout out? Do you want to say hi to anybody before we wrap it up?
I guess the developer Unwriter gets all the accolades online, but Attila, I have to say, I've had a number of conversations with him on Slack, and it's super helpful. I've helped him out with some things, and there's a number of people. There's actually the guy who runs Bico.media. I've had some conversations with him. Like, there's a lot of guys who are doing some really cool things out there, and they're very down to earth. We're all kind of helping each other along, figuring this stuff out as we go. And in reality, there's a lot of just base things that have been lost that we're all learning for the first time, even though that probably was known fully 8 years ago how a lot of these things work. And there's a great community on Unwriter Slack. So anyone who's interested in the dev space, definitely check that out. It's a free Slack. It's Great community there. People are very active, and
Nice.
there's some real good problems being solved.
Sure. We'll link to it in the description. Where can people learn more about CryptoFights? Where can they follow for news and updates and everything else?
We're CryptoFights.io is our website, and that's got kind of our high-level marketing stuff. As far as like news, and like we're pretty heads down trying to just get. There's been a lot of rework that's needed, and been a lot of kind of finishing things up that's been needed, and so we're pretty heads down working on that. So there's not a lot of new announcements or anything going on right now.
Okay.
But yeah, CryptoFights.io is probably the best place.
Perfect.
Or follow CryptoFights on Twitter.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, I really appreciate your time, David. Sounds like I'll be seeing you on Saturday at the Chicago BSV / maybe BCH meetup.
Come talk to me, folks.
Yeah. If anybody's interested, if you're in Chicago, 4 p.m. I wonder if this video will even be out by then. But if it is, you feel free. Come to the Emporium in Fulton Square for the BSV meetup. You can meet David. At least probably, and I will be there. We'll go over some stuff. So
yeah, and I'm driving 3 hours to get there, so make the most of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
See ya.
Right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Crypto Traders podcast. Please subscribe. We are available on iTunes, Google, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Amazon, also a whole bunch of other places. So just anywhere you can get a subscription of a podcast, you can find the Crypto Traders podcast, and we would very much appreciate your subscription so you can hear our interviews with developers, insiders, miners, and some really interesting folks. And if you're interested in scheduling an interview, please reach out to us. You can contact us and find all of our content at CryptoTradersPro.com. Please check out CryptoTradersPro.com/Bitcoin Bootcamp, as we are coming to a city near you to discuss everything about trading, investment, how to manage your portfolio, and I will be going over some Bitcoin fundamentals and how all that stuff works. So without further ado, Matt.
I'll see you on the moon.
See you on the moon, everybody. Bye-bye.